Dr. Power has already highlighted some of the background here. The genesis for this was the Resolution 26 at USHA a couple of years ago to support the creation and maintenance of a publicly accessible resource relating to the regulations for moving livestock interstate. The USDA provided some funds, and NIAA and USHA ran a competitive bid process, and my company, Trace First, were awarded the contract to implement this about a year ago, yeah, more or less. So during that first year, I guess there were a couple of things that, with hindsight, actually weren't too difficult. The creation of the software to run the InterstateLivestock.com website. We built a database of tagging sites. But what we found out the hard way, and I guess we knew it would be difficult, but it exceeded our expectations nonetheless, was capturing the data, capturing the information, and I can see lots of people smirking in the room. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Capturing the regulations for interstate movements. We focused only on cattle. The initial contract was only to implement the regulations for cattle movements. But getting that data, and I think the thing that made it more difficult was the way that we wanted to implement it. There is one interpretation of let's build a livestock movement regulations portal, which is everybody can just send you the regulations and you scan them and you put them on a website. But we really did not want to do it that way, primarily because that's just not usable enough. That is, from the perspective of producers, private veterinarians, that it's still difficult for them to wade through. And particularly if you think about a context where somebody's using a mobile device to try and look at these things, to understand the regulations. You know, a 60-page PDF of state regulations is not a particularly easy thing to digest or to wade through. So for us, the process was not simply, hey, send us your regulations in an envelope. The process for us was to reach out to all states, and I have to pay credit to my colleague Kathy Finnerty, who did all of the hard work of reaching out to states to acquire this information. But it was then taking that and converting it into essentially a series of questions and answers. And if the internet connection works, I'm going to show you what this looks like in a moment. If not, I can fall back to some screenshots to show you what it looks like. But this is at the heart of the proposition of InterstateLivestock.com. When you come to it as a producer, you are not required to read through and parse many pages of regulations. The user experience is that you are presented with a series of questions and answers, or questions to which you give answers, that then lead you to the regulations relevant to the movement that you're inquiring about. Okay, so stuff that does not pertain to the type of movement that you're talking about doing or that you're proposing to do isn't there, isn't cluttering up the experience or the user interface for the user. So the first thing that we did was to establish the point of contact with each state, and to then reach out and kind of explain this process and what it is that we were trying to achieve. Something that Kathy did quite early on was to prepare a flowchart representation of the ADT rules so that states would understand what we were trying to achieve for their specific regulations by using the ADT regs as a starting point. And, you know, the end goal, or where we wanted to get to, was to then have a list of questions and answers and associated regulations, which we then sent back to the states just to sign off on before they were published on the website. So we created the software that would then take this information and produce the web the website that I'm going to show you in a moment. The other thing was, it was a part of the contract as well, we also acquired a list of all of the tagging sites. We requested that from each state. And there's a part of the website where you can put in an address, and we use a Google Maps thing to show you the nearest tagging sites and provide their phone number, for example. So I guess it has two distinct modules in that regard. One is the tagging sites and one is the movement regulations. So I guess I'll just show you the tagging site functionality first, and then I'll move on and show you the actual movement regulations piece. So if we just find the mouse, yeah, that's it there. So what we can do is put in an address. So as you can see, when you start typing an address, it auto-completes. If you've used Google Maps before, you probably will recognize this type of interaction. So as soon as you start typing an address, it starts to suggest locations for you. So let's pick that one and hit Find Tagging Site. And what it's doing is going off to the database of tagging sites and retrieving a list of the tagging sites that are nearest to the address that I entered. So we can see here that Lockhart, which, as well as being a major barbecue capital, there's obviously an option there as well. So when we click on that pointer, we can see the address of this tagging site, and we can see the phone number. So again, no matter where you are, and I think in the next version of this, if you're accessing it with a mobile device, you can just say, use my current location, and then you don't need to put in an address. It'll find the nearest tagging sites to your location. So something that I'm going to reiterate a couple of times. If you haven't provided this tagging site data, please do. We are happy to include it. But of course, if there are any changes, I know it's not information that changes particularly frequently, but please do notify us about any changes. I think if this is an up-to-date resource and users know it, then they're more likely to come back and make better use out of it. So we don't want the data to get stale that's in there. So that's, if I scroll down a little bit, it gives you a list of, and I can't remember how many, maybe 10, the closest 10 or something like that. Okay, so that's how the tagging site piece works. If I go back to the home page, the other aspect, and certainly the one that was overwhelmingly more difficult or more time consuming, if you will, to implement, is the movement regulations. So if we pick an example where we're going to move some cattle from Florida to Georgia. So the thing to explain here is the user is not, again, I know I've said it a couple of times, the user is not being presented with the regulations, a Word document or a PDF saying, oh, you're moving cattle to Georgia, here are the regulations, good luck. What the user experience that we've built is there's a set of questions and answers that are asked. So, for example, we're asking here about the type of facility, and there's options: farm, rodeo, directly to slaughter. All the user need do is hit the option or press select on the option that relates to their movement. So they don't have any. The other thing about this is there's not the ability to see, to sort of give advance warning of, well, if you pick this option, this is what's going to happen, and if you pick this option, this is what's going to happen. You're simply asking, just tell us information about the proposed movement. So because I picked farm, the next question that comes up is it's asking me about whether the cattle are going to be used for breeding purposes. So I'm going to say yes. It asks me about the sex of the cattle, so I'll say male, and that leads me to another question about the age of the animals, 18 months and older. And at this stage, the user's done, and what they are receiving here is the information that relates to the particular movement that they have just described through the previous questions. Okay? In some cases, they might only have been asked one question, and if it's direct to slaughter, they might be straight to, well, here are the regulations that apply to that movement. So it's not always 4 or 5 questions, it could be one. And we do want to let states know that, you know, this can be as complex, and I don't mean that as a negative, I mean that as a positive. That can be as complex as you want it to be. The reason I say that that's a positive is, from the user's standpoint, they may have had to answer 10 questions if your regulations are described very discreetly and very specifically, but at the end of the process, they're only receiving the regulations that apply to the type of movement that they're talking about. It's not cluttered up with information that isn't relevant to their class of movement. So I think this is to Dr. Power's point. I think we can see from a practitioner's standpoint why this is a good thing. You're not needing, you can abandon your night class in law that you were taking with a view to understanding movement regulations. So what we do is we provide the regulations for this move. We provide information, just clarification about, pardon me, ear tags that qualify or that are considered classified, as Neil has said, as official. We provide a link, so if they want further information, they can go to Georgia Division of Animal Industry. They can just click that link to go there. And what we also did, in case they're going to print this out, something like that, we provide a list of the questions they were asked and the answers that they gave, so that there's no ambiguity about, oh, but it said they didn't need official ID tags, and you go, that's because you answered, the questions that were answered did not reflect the movement that you're proposing to do. So you effectively have a single web page then, and again, you'll have to take my word for it. It works well on a mobile device. The interface it detects you're using a mobile device and works as you would expect. So you can use your iPhone to do this rather than needing a computer to be able to access it. So this gives you a snapshot of, these are the questions you were asked, the answers that you gave, and on that basis, here is information, or here are the regulations that pertain to the movement that you need to be aware of. Okay. So if I talk about next steps, I'm very happy to say that in the last week we've had the contract renewed for a second year, which does a couple of things. First of all, it provides continued operation of the website for another year. So in terms of the cattle regulations that are in there, the tagging sites, etc., if you haven't already got them in there, and I think the overwhelming majority of states, we do have them in there, but if there are any changes, you need to let us know about the changes. Okay. The other major thing that our objective that we're going to be taking on for the next 12 months with this contract renewal is to implement some additional species. And I believe NIA, USHA did outreach, I think it was through the NASAHO group, I'm just not quite sure, but essentially solicited feedback about what the next species are that you all would like to have implemented in the system. And I guess in no particular order, equine, swine, and sheep and goats came back as the answer. And all of the above are in scope, or are included in the contract for the next 12 months. So you'll all be hearing from Kathy again as we re-engage. We'll obviously be taking the opportunity to explicitly ask if there are any changes to the cattle regulations, but we'll also be asking you for what we sincerely hope are simpler regulations for these other species. There's a couple of other features which I probably won't dwell on too much. We're going to implement better reporting as we think about future USAHA, NIAA meetings. I think you'll see us reporting some hard statistics about the volume of use that the system is getting. We'll also want to report on, if you like, state pairings, Florida to Georgia, North Dakota, South Dakota, particular high volume trade routes, if you will, that are being queried in the system. And I think that we'll be providing that information to NIA, USHA and USDA, but we'll also take the opportunity at meetings like this to give you all an update whenever possible. I think from a Trace First standpoint, we want to record our thanks, obviously, to USHA, NIA. They've been excellent to work with. I think have really left us to get on with it, which is kind of, in some ways, all you can ever ask for, to reach out to the states. And of course, we want to record appreciation to USDA, who have funded the initiative, so that there is now a portal at which producers and veterinarians right across the country can access this information in one spot.